This is Show and Tell, a podcast where we ask people to show us a little of themselves and tell us a lot about their businesses. Mace Hubert, welcome to Show and Tell.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Only a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. It's a privilege for me to have an opportunity to talk to you today, to interview you today. And I'm really glad you could make the time. So again, welcome to Show and Tell.
Thank you very much.
So Mace, I don't know if you know how it works here. I think you do. Normally we ask our guests to bring something along with them of personal significance so we could get to know them a bit better. And then we talk about that for a bit. And afterwards we talk a whole lot about their businesses, what they do, and what they're about. So I don't know if you managed to bring something with you.
I didn't manage to do it. Like I said, I only brought my personality and it's all in my mind.
Yeah.
The history we've got together.
That's okay. So why don't we explore that personality and see where it goes? Mace, look, I mean, maybe a good place to start is, I think we've known each other for 16, 17 years?
16 years, going for 17. Huh?
So there's a lot of history between, I think, you and I, but also between our businesses. When you go back and you think, do you remember how we first met?
I found your offices you were still in Centurion, close to Irene. Then just to get some information and consultation, because I came out of a little bit of transport background and forestry. And now I'm into the fuel industry. And I had also a little bit of knowledge on the lubricant side. So I wanted to know how to run a wholesale business properly.
Yeah.
And I came to your offices that side to come do some consultation with you, with Gulfstream people. And I got a good insight, the professional way you were running it in 2010.
And we only just started then as well.
Yeah, we started in 2009 with no knowledge.
Yeah.
So I had to better our business, and I thought, okay, and that we got hold of you, and that's where we started, and we started doing business then.
Now, before we go into the business too much, I want to get to know some things about you that perhaps I don't know. So where did it all start for you? I mean, we met 15, 16 years ago, but I think both of us have been on the planet for a lot longer than that. So where did it all start? Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Okay, I'm born and bred in Limpopo province, in Duivels Kloof, now Modjadjies Kloof.
Okay, was it called Duivels Kloof before?
Duivels Kloof, yes.
All right.
And then it changed in New South Africa to Modjadjies Kloof. And it was always known because my grandfather stayed there in Duivels Kloof, not in Duivels Kloof, on top of there in the mountains. He's born in 1853 and he passed away in 1927.
Your grandfather?
My grandfather. My
Wow.
father was born in 1917 and he passed away in 1966.
Okay.
So I could speak not very well, but I could speak the lingo, the Sepedis, the Northern Sotho language. And we always known, if they told us the labor and the farm workers, if they want to go to town, they didn't say we want to go to Duivels Kloof. They always told us in Sotho.
What did they say? Okay.
And Duivels Kloof was always known as Modjadji by the people born and bred there.
Right.
So that's Modjadjies Kloof, and I think it suits better today.
Okay. I only know it as Modjadjies Kloof.
Yeah,
It's not far away from Tzaneen.
It's about 22 kilometers away from Tzaneen.
Okay. And you grew up there, Mace?
I grew up there, yes.
Now, I happen to know what your real first name is. Because Mace is a nickname, isn't it? It's a bynaam.
Yeah. So
but I think everybody knows you as Mace.
yeah. No,
Would you care to explain that bit?
It happened in when I went to high school at
Yeah.
Marensky High School. It was the only agricultural school in our area, close to us.
Yeah.
And a very good school at that stage. It started, and it's an old school. And Dr. Marensky, you know the history of him. And I had to go there, and one of the teachers who was teaching me, I wasn't head boy material. So we were very, very busy. And then one teacher pulled me on the ear and said, listen, from now on, your name is Mace. Because
Okay.
I'm thin. I was small, I think second or third smallest in the class. And and blonde. So, and then
So a teacher gave you that nickname.
that teacher gave me that nickname.
Okay. And do you care to tell us what your actual first name is, or do you want to keep that quiet?
I can give it. It's no secret.
I think a
nobody
lot
will-
of people in our industry don't know.
My name is Ludwig.
Ludwig.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Ludwig van Beethoven.
So what are your full names?
Ludwig Pieter.
Ludwig Pieter Joubert.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So a teacher gave you that nickname. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So no, that and it stick
Okay. And then you grew up. I mean, you went to high school in
in Mariinsky.
Mariinsky, and
High
then
school, and after school we had to do our national service, the 2 years, and I came back. Back to Zanin area,
when did you do national service?
79, 80.
What was that like?
It was, we were forced to do it, and it was okay. It was a good lesson or a way of teaching you discipline
Right.
and respect.
Right.
And I've got only one line
Mm.
in my life that runs from top to bottom, and that line's name is respect. So, and I think that kept me on my way,
Mm.
on the road
Mm.
where I'm going.
Okay. And after being in
National-
service, after national service,
Yeah, I did a lot of things. I had to survive. So
yeah.
I
Did you
worked
get
for-
into business immediately?
No. I worked for my older sister and brother-in-law. They're much older than me. I'm the laat lammetjie. And then I decided, no, I want to do something on my own, and I did a lot of things. Then eventually I worked at a sawmill, and that in that days we were cutting tomato boxes from wood, from blue gum.
Mm.
And the tomatoes were packed in. There was no carton box.
I remember the old tomato boxes.
Yeah, the old tomato
I used to
boxes.
use them to make model planes because they were easy to saw through.
That's it. The pine and the blue gum.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
the blue gum cracked. The pine was the nice
Right.
one. The only thing is when it got wet, it got moldy,
Mm.
so it turned blue.
Okay. So you worked at a sawmill.
Yeah, so I was in the forestry side, the harvesting, cutting the trees, harvesting the trees for the sawmill. To cut we call the tomato boxes,
Yeah.
and we also cut from the thicker trees. The sawmill also cut branding
Okay.
for the building industry.
Okay. And what did you do after that, Mace?
After that, I saw when I was doing the harvesting at the sawmill, I saw a loophole in the industry to plant trees, to replant the plantations. So I replanted plantations, and then we also, with the water problems we've got in our country, the forestry people said, no, we're going to take out. In the olden days, they planted in the valleys. So we took all the blue gum out there, and the forestry trees, and planted indigenous trees. So to restore the water catchment and so on. And that's what I did for, I think, 10 years, 12 years. And then I got into the lubricant transport and lubricant services.
How did that happen? Because that's quite different from planting trees.
Yeah, I always had trucks, small trucks and so on. And I love trucks. So,
You still do.
yeah, I still do. Then a friend of mine who supplied me the lubricants, he was with a big name. He was also a rep there, and he serviced me. And then he told me he's going to go on his own. He's got an opportunity to go on his own to do the lubricants. And what I learned from him is his service was good. So if I needed some grease or any kind of lubricant, I phoned him and said, they'll be there tomorrow or this afternoon. And the delivery took place.
Okay.
And that's very important, because if a truck's wheel's not turning, it's costing you money. So, And that's one of the lessons I learned. And then he was based in Polokwane.
Mhm.
And then he asked me if I can do some deliveries for him in Zanin. Keep some stock for him there, and if he needs an urgent delivery, because Polokwane is over 100 kilometers, around about 100 kilometers from us. I said, no problem. And I did that, and then I got into the lubricant business. And then with the lubricants, when you do lubricants, there's always, why don't you do fuel, diesel? Diesel
Right.
mostly at the farming and the construction sites, because we're giving good service. And at that stage, not negative to the majors, but the majors couldn't get up to the service level in the countryside, to the sites,
In the outlying areas.
and the outlying areas, to the sites there. And although they stayed there long, and then they withdrew from the outlying areas. You know, the first people, the depots are standing empty at our place.
Yeah.
It's changed hands.
Right. You're talking about on the diesel side?
On the
or
diesel
on the
side.
diesel and lubricant side?
Diesel and lubricant side, but the lubricant side, they started privatizing or giving it out to agents before they started withdrawing with the fuel on the fuel side. I think in 2000, 98, 2000, there was only 1, 2, 3 of the majors left. And the last ones to leave was, I think, Caltex.
Right.
So
That happened across the country, where the majors pulled out of the...
they left all
the far
they
outlying
left all the
areas.
equipment there and everything.
And I think the idea was then to use agents or to use third parties to do the distribution to customers.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that opened an opportunity for you.
Yeah, so the opportunity came, and then a company came to me and asked if I want to do it for them in the area, because I know the area and so on, I know the people, and that's where it started. So we started small, and then I sit in the same office, never changed from work for about 12 years, but only changed from bosses.
Okay.
So, and then the opportunity came up to start our own business.
Okay, so in that, did you have to go and buy a truck to do the distribution when you started?
Yes. What happened, the opportunity came up. It's for a guy which I worked for. And he said he want to sell off the Zanin branch and I think the Marble Hall branch. And I said to him, I'll be interested. I'll take the Zanin branch.
Okay, so you bought the branch.
But then he still had a brand new truck. Not brand new, but very new. And one of the conditions is I have to buy the truck. It was a Rigid and a drawbar.
Okay.
And a car. So for a new company or a new business to get finance to buy that, it was quite difficult, but we could make a plan.
I think for the listeners, Mace, can you just explain what is a Rigid and what is a drawbar?
Okay, a Rigid is a truck. It's got a fixed tank on it. It's
Right.
the truck itself with a tank on the back.
Okay.
And then a drawbar is a trailer you can hook behind that truck with the tank on.
Okay.
It's not like a mechanical horse and a trailer. It's a
Right.
Rigid truck, so it's smaller and it
Okay.
can get in easily at difficult places.
Right, because you can unhook the drawbar.
You can unhook the drawbar, and you can make the drawbar your station also if you have to do the deliveries where it's difficult. Go back, fill the truck, and go back and do all your deliveries.
And how much fuel can you load with one of those?
It depends on the size you're buying. It varies from 30,000, but all your transport rates is based on the biggest, longest, and highest. So a normal Rigid and drawbar is 39,000 liters diesel and 42,000 liters of petrol. Right. So 16,000 diesel in the front on the
Rigid.
On the Rigid, and 23,000 on the trailer.
Can I ask you to let us in on a little secret? Because whenever I had a question about transport, you were the guy I used to phone. Because I always felt like you knew everything there was to know about trucks. What's your favorite truck?
My favorite truck was the International
Okay.
for the big
Right.
trucks, but they withdrew out of South Africa due to the Americans thinking the right-hand steering component is too small for them. And then we bought Nissans. I grew up with Nissans, and the reason why I did that is if you've got a breakdown on the road, we had the agent in Zanin, in Polokwane, Mokopane, all the way up to Joburg. There's agents that can give us good after-sales service.
Right.
And it's a reliable truck, and it's cost-effective.
Okay.
For us, in our spectrum, we're using it.
And your business today, how many trucks do you have?
In the fuel side, we've got 15.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we've got 4 flat decks and small trucks.
Okay, but I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I wanted to ask you how your business then grew from there. Because I mean, ultimately, you created a very big business, and I think you've got a very big footprint in Limpopo.
What we did, how we did it is we started with the one truck.
Mm-hmm.
I drove it for a while myself.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then we got the right drivers, and then I remember when Gulfstream came to help me. That same truck with the drivers had an accident and it burnt out, so it was written off. So we only had one truck, and we started this business, and and you immediately sent one of your trucks to come and help me.
It was also rigid, I think.
Also Richard, MAN you had, and to pull the business through. And later on, I think a year later, we were your biggest customer, Gulfstream's biggest customer.
You were one of our first customers.
Yeah.
One of our very first customers. And you were, for a while there, you were definitely our biggest customer.
So that's why we're still here. We're in a partnership.
And sometimes you're still a pretty big customer. I think it just depends on how the market shifts these days. But I mean, we've been very lucky, I think, to have you as a partner. I wouldn't even call you a customer, but as a partner for so many years.
No, thank you very much. So it's a drawback, or if something like that, your only truck is written off, and now how are you going to survive? And you haven't got a name yet in the industry,
Right.
and that's the way we stick together. That's we always look after each other.
And how did you take the business to the next phase after that?
Because when we started, you need some cash flow.
Yeah.
With the margins that's so small, you can't go borrow money at the bank, because of a gross profit margin of 1 to 3%. 1%.
Those are the numbers.
Is going to the bank, then you still have got all the overheads and all the risks.
After that.
Yeah. So I got a partner in, and took a loan account. We went 50-50. And from there, he came to us after 8-9 years. He said, no, business is on its way. His focus is on the farming and the nut industry. He wants to expand there, and he gave us the opportunity to buy his 50%. But he also lent me a lot of transport. He had, before he came to us, and he sold it off, he had close to 100 trucks himself. And he lent me to manage, it sounds like, what do you call it, micromanagement. But it's the small things you have to manage in the transport.
That add up.
That add on. And by buying the right truck, by looking at the most, the highest loading capacity you can get, payloads, and on your tires, on the speed, and your after-sales service is important. And I learned a lot from our ex-partner. So he's doing well on his side. He's older, also want to retire now. So, I don't know if he wants to retire, but I think he's working that way to.
Are you trying to tell us you retired now, Mace?
Yeah, I'm not retired totally. I'm not so involved with the business anymore. I just go in, like I always say, my My job in our company now is, I'm turning 67.
Yeah.
My job in our company is to do nothing. And
I like that.
and if I catch somebody else doing my job, I fire him. That's just a joke.
I think everybody aspires to that.
So yeah, no, I'm just giving advice. My son
Right.
came in.
Yeah. Leon.
Leon.
Yeah. And how has that been? Because I think second generation now.
Second generation. What happened is during COVID lockdown, I kept the business to myself. I kept it close, and I didn't want to give away. And then I got the first month of COVID, I got sick, and I had to let go. And he was working for us, but he was working in a logistics office, and he had to go through that training and everything. And he had his own business before that, prior to that, and he was flying, he was a pilot and so on. But then he came and and I went to hospital, to ICU, and when I came back, I came out of hospital and I said I was busy recovering. I said, no, but he's doing a good job. And that was a lesson to let go. New blood, new ideas. You must be open for that. And he's doing very well. There's sometimes I'm just advising, not the dominant. Just tell them this is how I would have done it. And they ask me questions. So I just go and look at the figures in the morning, not every morning when I feel less like that. I'm not the fundi on the computer. I'm BBC, born before computers. So I just, on our system, I look at the figures, the CPL, CPKs, that's important. And on a technical side, I will assist them also. Marketing.
And other than that, do you leave him to make his own decisions?
He's got his own decisions, but he's got an open relationship. We speak. We talk to each other before there's a big decision to make on deciding what trucks to do, to buy, and what do we think about the suppliers, and it's just advising because it comes with experience, and he wants to learn, and not a lot has changed on our side of the industry from buying the normal, from the supplying side to then the other thing is I'm just involved with the marketing still. I became the face of the company.
I think you still are.
Yeah, but I got a new guy in. He's doing our marketing.
Okay.
I don't know if you've met him. Douglas Elphingston.
Yes, of course I've met him.
Yeah, so, and he's taking over. If we have to go and do a function or a golf day or something, they invite him now. They don't invite me anymore.
It sounds like there's some leadership in transition or that has transitioned. Can I ask you, Mace, for anyone listening who is in a similar situation and who's needing to sort of hand over or let go of the power or the decision making, what advice would you give them? I mean,
before we go to that question, I must say Monica, my wife, is involved.
Yes.
She's a backbone.
Right. Is she still involved in the business?
Very, very, very. She doesn't want to quit. She's working very hard.
Right.
And she's
so it's a family business. I mean, your wife's in the business. Your son has taken over the business.
My youngest daughter is in there.
The youngest daughter's in the business as well.
My other daughter is also involved.
Right.
But,
so advice for people who have family businesses in transition then?
The thing is, you mustn't say, I've tried that, it didn't work. Because you've tried it 20 years ago. Technology has changed. Systems has changed. And if you haven't adapted, you're going to disappear. You must be able to adapt to the newer ways of doing things. And you must have trust in your family. Everybody's got these speciality to bring in. My youngest daughter came in 2 years ago after she studied, and she brought in on the retail side. She brought in new branding and new way of thinking.
This was your daughter that was studying in Pretoria?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, she was here at Tux doing her BCom accounting, but she did a little bit of social with it. The middle daughter, she's a CA. She's involved with an auditing firm partnership there.
Yeah.
But she's also helping on our side. So, yeah, with just minor things, but if we need something to know about how to do this, what's the tax implication going to be, she's involved with that. And then Leon.
That's a good skill to have in a business.
Yeah, I think the paperwork is very important.
Very.
Very, very important. And then, you must have the cornerstones. And if it's in a family business, our 4 cornerstones is, or 4 cornerstones is, be the decisions you make. Was it honest? Was it fair?
Right.
To everybody. The second thing is you must never get arrogant. Never be bigger than the game. Be humble and be kind to people. The third one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, trust in the family. Yes, they must be there, and let them do their thing, and you can just give your advice and say, listen, this is not the right way. I don't like it. I would have done it like that, but with respect.
Yeah. Sounds like very good advice.
Yeah.
Mas, how is the landscape of the petroleum industry? Maybe first tell us how big the petroleum part of your business is versus the other part, because I think you have other parts to your business. And then also, how has the landscape changed for you over the last 15 years that you've been doing this?
Yes, we've got the petroleum is about 70%, 60-70% of our business. But we split the transport from the petroleum. For the one reason, because you can cross-subsidize without knowing it. You cut on the transport if it's one business, and you think you're making money on the petroleum, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So we split it. The transport is a company on its own.
Okay, so it's a legal entity on its own.
Legal entity on its own.
Right.
And they've got a contract with the petroleum company to transport the fuel and do the deliveries.
Right. And for people that don't know, the name of your petroleum company?
It's PPS.
PPS.
It's the reason why it's PPS. We bought over the site, the business from PPS in Burgersfort, and that I was part of it when they started, and because it's when the mine started in 2006. Before that, the mines already started, and that is Platinum Mines.
Okay.
So the owner of the business in Burgersfort said, "What will you call it?" I said, "Why don't you call it Platinum Petroleum Supplies?"
Okay, is that what it means? I didn't know.
So and then that logo, and we didn't want to change when we took over the logo because it was already established in
as a brand
in our area. And so we just changed the logo and kept the PPS.
Okay. So your transport business separate from the petroleum business?
That's it, yes. Okay. And it's also PPS Transport, PPS Petroleum. It's a PPS group.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah.
Platinum Petroleum Supplies.
Yeah. Okay. But it's not, but that's the previous owner's name.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay.
So we just PPS.
Right. Just
because
PPS.
it's easy on the tongue. And
yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
And the landscape, how have you seen that changing over the years?
You know, the supply, in the beginning, we were loading, say, from Oorigstad, 140 kilometers from us. And because the zone differential made sense, and it was closed. So your service deliveries, you didn't need much more trucks to keep up your service. Then it changed. The majors closed some of the depots where we were loading.
Yeah.
So we had to go to Pretoria.
Right.
And from Pretoria, with Gulfstream, we landed up collecting from Secunda and Sasolburg.
Sure.
So yeah, so then we grew, and we had to buy more trucks and more trucks, and we gave a realistic budget to a truck. I see some of the other people in the area here, when I see them at a social event or golf day or somewhere, they're telling me they're doing 18 to 20 loads per truck per month. I can't reach that because we have 1,000 kilometer distance, and they've got nearly the same. So my trucks are doing a realistic budget is 13 loads a month. And we did sometimes 18 loads, and we're going there now with the new systems, the new blood, new ideas. It's working towards that. So it's good utilization of, it's a very expensive tool. And the more you utilize it, the cheaper it becomes for you to deliver.
Yeah. So, because I think with transport, there's this thing, you have fixed costs and variable costs, right?
Yeah.
So if the truck is standing, you're paying.
You're paying.
So you've got to keep that thing moving if at all possible.
At all possible. We've got the 2 Reject trucks now. We're getting a third one now in April. The Reject trucks are doing a volume, quite a high volume, because they do short distances and small deliveries.
Okay, so the liters per kilometer is quite high.
Quite high. And we use the normal Reject truck, which take 16,000, 18,000 liters, and it still worked out on a loss of about 40,000 Rand, close to 40,000 Rand a month, operating it, doing 600,000 liters per truck.
Sure.
So we decided we're going to go take a bigger Reject. If we put 19%, could load 19% more. So we went and bolted twin steer, so we could load 24,000 liters.
What is that?
A twin steer is also a Reject, but it's got 2 steering axles.
Right.
So because the legal capacity is 7.2 on your front axle, so you put 2 steering axles in.
Okay.
And that truck is still running at a loss. We tried to we wanted to get it to break even, and it's also moving the same volume. So the transport you have to manage very, very carefully, and like I said, micromanage it.
Right.
The landscape, we've moved away from zone differentials. Telling the guy, this is your price, to the customer, this is your price, I'll give you so much on the grid.
Okay.
I came, buy from Gulfstream, this is my price, this is my transport cost, this is my admin, this is everything I have to.
Okay, so you give them a price build-up.
A build-up price, open book. That's
right.
I've got an open book, and if they want to question it, I said, here's it.
Yeah.
I always go there just with the cost to land it at his place or the customer's place. And I said, okay, what percentage would you say will work here to put on? And I was 10%. I said, then you'll never buy from me.
So you basically ask the customer, would you buy it if I make some money as well?
Yeah, because I have to make money. Yeah. I've got an open book, and
sure.
And there is so much competition. With some of the people operating, coming from Gauteng side and all over the country, operating in our area. About the thing with the bonded products, and so
a lot of nonsense going on.
Yes, so we lost.
And I was going to ask you,
40% of our business due to pricing.
Okay,
and
is that people not paying duties through the border?
Yeah, and that's not that the quality of the product was wrong. The quality of the product was right, but the snag was
illegal.
It was illegal. And I said to Leon and said, listen, we're going to stick to our guns. We stay honest.
Yeah.
We don't, even if we have to have an auction and close the business, but you only got one name.
That's right.
So, and the fuel industry is big.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, it's so small. Small.
You're right.
And the moment a thing runs, everybody knows about it. They don't talk about it, but everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the difficult times, and the landscaping was that. And there's still a lot of monkey business, I think, going on in the industry. And people come to me, we want the best price. I always want the best price, as if 2 cents and 3 cents a litre is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm honest with you, I've given you my best price. I've got an open book. You said that, and I've given you the best price. I'm also, otherwise, I'll rather walk away, and what we did. We walked away from some deals, and 3, 4 months later, 5 months, 6 months, they come back to us.
Yeah.
And that is just because we were honest. And that's a big thing, and it's difficult in this industry where there is such a lot of competition with monkey business.
That's true. So. We've often said, not everybody's a Gulfstream customer. Not everybody fits the mold. And it's not just about price, it's about other things as well. You know, how they conduct their business, what their reputation is like in the industry, the people, the relationships. Those things are all important to us. Yeah. But I've often said to customers, if you don't want me to make money, then I'm not interested in supplying you. Because you don't want to value a customer and look after a customer properly.
That's it.
It's a bit hard to do that when you're losing money on a delivery.
No, for sure. I know that. You know, the biggest roller for us is a price increase.
Right.
And a price decrease.
Yeah.
You know, the prices. And everybody wants product.
Yeah.
The day after
just
the price decrease.
The day after and the day before.
And then you sit with stock. And I always tell my people, Ronald, Ronnie, Douglas, Leon, you had the balls to take the order at the old price. So if it's a price increase, so you must take the responsibility to do the delivery at the price the customer ordered at. Rather say no to him and let him be cross.
Yeah.
But you know, a salesman, I'm a salesman. You don't say no to any order.
You and I both. But rather let him be a little bit cross now than a lot cross later.
Later, yes.
Because that happens as well.
You must stick to your guns.
Mace, can we talk transport economics?
Okay, yes.
It's come up a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to talk to you about this thing of running trucks and the cost of operations. So when I look at the cost of a truck, usually I look at the fixed costs and I look at the variable costs. So the fixed costs would be, what would the fixed costs be? Proportionally, how much, when you look at the cost of running a vehicle, how much of it would be fixed costs and how much would be variable costs?
I haven't got the percentage answer to you. I've got a practical answer because my practical answer is you must see, depending on how you're buying the truck, how you finance it, what's your interest rate. Mm-hmm. So if you bought it cash, how many months do you depreciate it? What's your tax? What works the best for your tax? Right. You have a tax benefit on it. The fixed cost is the depreciation or your installment per month, or taken it over a period, the period you finance it. If it's 60 months, that's your fixed cost. Then you other thing is your driver is a fixed cost without incentives, and your insurance. That's a 3 fixed costs you've got.
So things you pay irrespective of whether the truck is driving.
Yeah. So you have to pay the driver, you have to pay the insurance, you have to pay the installment. Mm-hmm. And just to be safe, if you bought it cash, you must put that money away.
Right. Okay. And then variable costs?
Variable costs depends on the kilometers you're doing. The utilization of your truck is your variable cost is tires, maintenance.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Fuel.
Fuel consumption is very, very important. I think fuel consumption is between 30 and 40% of your cost if you run a transport truck.
Yeah.
Depends on the price of the fuel. It nearly went up 3 years ago. It went up in our case up nearly to 50%.
50% of your operating cost.
Yes, so when the prices were so high. So you must always look at your fuel consumption, discipline your drivers, monitor that.
Right.
So that's a variable cost you've got. And then working out your routes. The routes is very, very important. Your stem and zone distances, you must do that. That it's important because you can go and do the delivery and keep service up to standard, but it's costing you a lot of money because you didn't have enough volume to deliver.
Right.
In our case with the fuel. So that's very important. Planning of the route planning.
Because if you deliver half a load, it's pretty much comes at the same cost as delivering a full load, doesn't it?
Yes, it depends on the distance we have to travel.
Yeah.
But we've taken the minimum, the fixed cost, and said, okay, the fixed cost to cover it, we must run this at cents per liter or cents per kilometer. Minimum, there's a radius, say, of if we have to do 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers for a load, we say, okay, this is a minimum transport cost we've got. And that comes back to when I explained to you earlier with the pricing of the product.
Yeah.
So we've got a fixed cost. If they say go and deliver this, I said, okay, we're going to charge you 20 cents a liter transport cost.
Right.
Irrespective of if it's 1 kilometer or 50 kilometers. Because the cost is there.
Now, earlier you mentioned the devil is in the detail here when it comes to managing transport, right? If you had a young person in front of you who asked you for some advice and you only had 2 minutes to give them advice, what would you tell them to look out for if they wanted to run a transport business efficiently?
The first thing is they must go do their homework. They must determine what line of transport they want to do. The second thing is budget. They must draw up a budget properly. And don't work on ifs, work on the reality. By saying, I'll get this per ton or per pallet space or per liter. Work on the reality, what your cost is. Because if you're not honest to yourself. And then you keep it honest and realistic. So budget is very important. Then you must get the right tool. If you want to you want to transport fuel, you must go and work out what's the density per liter or the weight per liter or per 1,000 liters of the commodity you're transporting.
Okay.
And therefore, then you want maximum loading capacity, payload. Payload, the maximum payload you want. Work it on that. So you have to buy right. You have to buy the right tool. I always go and say, I go not for the cheapest truck. I go for the most reliable truck for me. But also I take in consideration the mechanical horse. If we work now on triaxles, mechanical horse, which is a reliable truck, what is the cost cents per kilometer it's running at, what the agents give you. And you can go and do your own homework also. There's always, in Afrikaans we call it die lyn van gemiddel is.
Yeah.
Take the fuel consumption to the gemiddeld, not to the consumption that is being advertised.
Right. Just explain that again. Die lyn van gemiddeld is.
Gemiddel is. So if we bring in nature here.
Of course.
So if you're a cattle farmer, so you've got this expensive, high quality bred bull.
Right.
And a high quality bred, it's on top of the whole breeding line. It's on top. So now you're gonna let them mate. You gaan nou. So now you expect that calf to be born. It must be higher.
Correct.
And that calf is born, it's very low. It's not what you've expected.
Right.
Then you take a very good bull
Yeah.
and an average cow in the
Right.
same breed, or
Okay.
lower below, and then they breed
Below average.
below
Yeah.
average, and then you get average and above. It depends on the genes.
Right.
So you must always, the nature always brings us back to the line of gemiddeles, die lyn
Yeah.
van gemiddeles, and it brings us back there.
Okay.
And then you start getting this.
Okay, then you start tracking against that.
Yeah, you have to work on the line van gemiddeles. Don't work on, so I'm getting a big truck, I'm getting 4 kilometers
Yeah.
or 4.5 or 3. Work on the line. I think I'm using the base as 2.5 kilometers a liter.
2.5 Ks per liter.
Yeah.
Okay. These are
That
the big
is-
fuel trucks.
The big fuel trucks.
Okay.
The reason why is sometimes you do a shorter distance.
Right.
You have to have 3
Sure.
or 4 stops. And then you've got a long distance, your fuel consumption is better. Depends on the area you're operating in. It's in mountains.
Right.
It's a flat
Yeah.
area. So, yeah. So you must look at the right tool,
Mm-hmm.
the one that's the lightest. So because it's going to give you payload over the period, the lifespan of that truck. So if your truck is 500 kgs lighter, your mechanical horse,
Right.
it will give you in the fuel about 800 liters more you can load.
Okay.
If you take
Yes,
the,
because it'll influence your payload.
your payload. So then you must have the tires.
But hold on, Mace, is there such a difference between trucks, weight-wise?
Yes.
Can you have as
yes,
much as
yes,
500
yes, yes, yeah.
kilograms?
You get, they put on a scoop on top.
Yeah.
They put the bull bar on.
Right.
The weight of the truck, if you go and compare it, the truck A weighs 7.5 tons or 7.8 tons, and the competition, the other truck is weighing 9 tons or 8 tons, 8.2 tons. Be very careful with extras you're putting on.
Sure, it's worth
Don't-
thinking
don't-
about, eh? Because for every kilogram you put on, is more than a liter of diesel or petrol for that matter that you
That's
can't
it,
load.
yes. Long distance tanks, that's disappeared
Mm.
because that's adding a weight. If you put a hydraulic system, if you go side tippers, you go for the old systems. I remember my first trucks we had the system that it took nearly 180 liters of hydraulic oil just to operate the pump, the PTO pump, to offload. So the newer systems, with the oil, everything in, it takes 18 liters of oil and weighs 48 kilograms.
Mm.
So, if you take the tank, because the tank, everything on the older system was about 400 kgs
Yeah.
with oil. Now you're going down to 48. If you just
It's a
take
big difference.
big difference. In the end, it adds up your tires.
Yeah.
Not your tires, your rims.
Yeah.
Put aluminium rims on.
Lighter.
It's lighter.
And if you
it
calculate
gives
it
it
over
just-
the lifespan of the vehicle.
Yeah, it's over the. It's more expensive than the steel rim, but you want to have to load the maximum
Yeah.
capacity, the payload, and then we also go. That's one of the things you have to look at. Price. You must get an average price on the truck, which you are comfortable with, and that's just some ideas you have to look at. Weight. Price, don't be cosmetic. Cosmetics is costing you money.
What do you mean by that?
By putting a chrome bull bar on,
Okay.
all that kind of extras, a wind scoop for.
Right.
I know with your tot liners and stuff, it deflects the wind.
Yeah.
Then it's necessary to put it on, but. Be careful. Just look how light you can get your truck and your trailer. And with that, we've moved away from. We went to the SPDs, sealed parcel delivery on our tankers. That's one, and we went down from 7 compartments to 5.
Right.
And that's one pipeline less under your belly
Probably lighter as well.
Lighter as well.
Mm.
Everything is lighter. That I think we saved there. I'm speaking under correction. It's about 600, between 500 and 600 kgs. It's less maintenance to do because the foot valve. You've got 2 foot valves per compartment.
Right.
So we went down from 7 to 5 compartments
Yeah.
to do it. That can do the mixed loads, but that's one thing they must do. Make sure it's the right tool for the right application.
Yeah.
The lightest truck you can get for the maximum payload.
Right.
Fuel consumption, work on the averages. Your budget is very important, and do your homework on what you want to transport. And there's a lot of people, there's a lot of stuff available to look at. And don't go for, if you go for the tires, you can go and buy expensive tires. If your driver is not disciplined and doesn't look at the tire pressure, that tire is going to give you less tires, less kilos than kilometers than a cheap tire.
And affect your fuel consumption.
Effective fuel consumption. So all the tires is good on the market.
It's a lot of things to look at.
So yeah, transport is, you must look at that, and speed. Speed is very, very important, and driver trainer.
Right.
From your manufacturer, they must give your drivers training. I know we worked it out once, just by training our drivers. We got about 90 to 120 meters per liter more on average over. So if you take it over the kilos you're doing
meters
a month,
per liter.
100 and
That's 10%. 10% on a K.
On a K. And that gives you a saving. At the end of the year, you can buy it, if it depends on how big your fleet is, you can nearly buy a mechanical horse cash.
But how did training give you extra or better fuel consumption?
A simple reason. When we had the older trucks, it's got the International's got a small digital thing to tell you, because it's semi-automatic, in which gear the truck is. It's got 18 gears, and then it never selected to 18 because the driver was driving, he's happy, he's in the green band with the ref counter.
Yeah.
But he never looked at that small digital thing there. It never selected to 18. And all he had to do is step on the accelerator and leave it again, and it selects 18. Because 18th gear is like in the older cars, overdrive. And that's for your fuel consumption. Yeah. So that fuel consumption is very important. Speed, very, very important, because a truck is only allowed to drive 80 kilometers an hour where it's permitted.
Yeah.
Drive 80 kilometers an hour because it's 55 tons in motion. And to stop it, it's dangerous. Your wear and tear, if you're overspeeding, is so much higher. Your brakes and everything, and on your tires. Tire pressures, very important. Wheel alignments, truck alignment, very important. Because in the olden days, 20 years ago, we budgeted about 80,000 to 90,000 per set of tires.
Yes.
We also run retreads. I moved away from retreads, only new tires.
We gave that up ourselves long ago.
Yeah, no, that is not for our industry.
Not for our industry.
Yeah, so that is the thing, and you just be honest with yourself. Work out the thing, and if you've got questions, there's so many places to go to. Ask what this is. Ask the payload, the weight of the truck, the horsepowers. You know, most people want to go for the horsepower. Yeah. Going for 520 or horsepowers. But the torque, look at the torque of the truck, because you're towing. So that extra horsepower is just burning diesel.
Just burning fuel.
I know the older trucks, they brought down from the old Internationals from 472 horsepower with a conversion, brought it down to 452 horsepower. And that, it's 20 horsepower gone. But the torque remained the same.
Yeah.
And that gives you another 100 to 150 meters per liter. It's just a small thing.
Yeah.
And over the lifespan of that truck, it's a lot of money. But driver training, very important. Very, very important. It helps looking after your vehicle. Your lifespan on the vehicle is getting longer. We always we replaced our trucks at 750,000 kilometers. I've got trucks now and the maintenance is still lower than a new truck.
Yeah.
We're going for 1.2, 1.3 million kilometers.
Over 1 million Ks, eh?
Yeah, and it's still running strong, reliable, no problems. We look at the maintenance very carefully there. And because if you sell a truck today, a second-hand truck, you can't even buy a new bakkie with the price they're giving you. So,
wow, Mace, thanks for the advice. I think for younger people, they would have learned a lot from that. But I think for some of us older folk as well, because as you were talking, I was thinking I better go back into my own business and go and have a good look at the transport indicators again.
The thing is to manage.
There's a lot to think about, and there's work to be done if you're going to run a proper transport operation.
You need somebody to manage it.
Yeah,
they must. And you just to manage, you could put just a base for yourself and say, I want to know this, this, this. And you'll quickly pick up if they don't manage the system of the protocol you've put together there.
Thanks for that.
No, thank you very much. I hope it helped.
No, I'm sure. I
don't think we're perfect, but we try.
No, listen, I think it's even helped my thinking as well. So thanks for that. I want to ask you something a little bit different, because I don't know if you know this, but you are the only customer that I've ever taken home to my mom.
Really? Yeah,
yes.
What a privilege.
Who takes customers home to their mothers? You're the only one. And I think it all stemmed from you wanting to visit the Cape Flats at some stage. Yeah, do you remember?
We were sitting there at the bush camp there at Moketsi.
Yes.
And we were talking about places and stuff where you've been and all that. And you, or Earl, somebody asked me, where would you like to go? Yeah. I said, and you told me a lot of the Cape Flats, and I see on the news a lot of the Cape Flats and how dangerous it is and so on. And I said, I would like to go to the Cape Flats. I want to learn and have a first-hand experience on the culture, on the olden days, how it worked. You explained it very well. Okay, we went there. I'm jumping the gun.
You saw it firsthand?
I saw it firsthand when we went in Mitchell's Plain for coffee. I had a jacket on there. I got it out of the car. And then the other guy came there with a golf branded for the soccer. A little city golf, and he was branded the Liverpool, I think.
You're remembering very well.
And we got out of the car, and they stopped there, and they said to you, called you people for you and Govan.
Yeah.
And I said, wat maak julle met hierdie whitey? Kan julle 'n kroon maak met hom?
I remember that.
And you said, no, dit maak nie krone nie.
No, I think you said, ek weet wat maak julle met hom. Julle soek weer 'n kroon.
'n kroon,
of so iets.
Yeah. So we went for
you had a good chuckle. And then we went in for coffee.
Coffee and I had a bike.
That was in the heart of Mitchell's Plain.
That's complex. And he said to me, just walk close to me. And so we went to a coffee shop there, and he said, Shane, he told me, this guy will come to you and say, mooi bikeie hierin, hè? And I said, yeah? I said, okay, trek hom uit. So he'll take it from you that way. He doesn't throw it. You have to give it to him. Then what's outstanding for me was we went to visit your mother. And a standing rule is you have to take a bottle of whiskey with.
Yeah, she had that rule.
And
it was the price of entry.
Yes, the price of entry. That's it. So, and I forgot to buy the bottle of whiskey, and you stopped at the place, a bar there, and it's quite busy. But I went in and bought the whiskey.
Yeah.
And you came out and it said, so Gowan said, that is a smokkel bar or smokkel.
It's a smokkelhuis.
A smokkelhuis. So
it's a shebeen.
A shebeen, yes. So he said to me, please don't tell her you bought
I took it to Shabir.
from the smokkelhuis. So,
Yeah.
because then she wouldn't want it because she didn't like the drugs and all that kind of stuff. There should be going on there. That was outstanding for me. And then we got
But we also went to go buy a Gatsby.
that Gatsby burger. Yeah. That's a big thing.
In
Belleville.
Gatesville.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So it was super nice, but it's rich and it's big and it was very, very nice. We had it with your mum, and afterwards we had that bottle of whiskey. Not the whole bottle, but we had to have a whiskey with her.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, we were sitting on the stoop there at the house, and
You
the
remember
people was
well.
working there, walking up and down there, and she said, "You see that one?" She was informed of the whole area, and that she was in the 80s already, late 70s, 80s.
Late 70s at the time.
And she was, she said, that one's wrong, that was this. And what was nice for me to see, all the people that's staying there, stayed there for long. There was no for sale signs outside the houses. Did you see that?
I didn't really notice that, but
I
now
think
that you mention it.
You can go back when you go back there sometime. Just go and look. There's no for sale or sold signs outside on the streets there.
Yeah,
I think the houses been carried over from generation to generation.
very much so.
It's
We've
a big
seen-
family living there.
Yeah, very, very strong community life. And we've seen now third generation starting to take over houses.
You see, yeah.
You know, from parents that took over houses from their parents, as an example. So
Yeah,
people
so-
know each other in those communities quite well.
Yeah, and she had nice stories to tell. Yeah, I enjoyed
Yeah, it was quite a trip.
it. It was a trip. It was a memorable trip, and it was one of the highlights in my life.
Yeah.
And I went overseas to Ireland and so on. It was nice, but this one is, I can't remember much of the overseas trips, but this one I remember.
You remember your trip to
it
the
was
Cape Flats?
something special in my life.
Yeah, I remember it very well as well.
That's
I was
amazing.
glad we could do that. It was something different.
Yeah.
It was something different.
So I'll take you now on a trip in the Limpopo province.
I'm up for it.
Okay, we'll organize it.
Although I've been to visit you a few times, but I think
we
we've got a
must
few.
go on a weekend trip.
We've got a few other things on the agenda at some
Yeah,
stage.
so we'll
Yeah, that
do
will be
it.
good.
That's on my agenda for this year.
So, Mace, can you tell us the way forward for PPS and for you?
The way forward, the new generation is in. I'll support them wherever I can, and we must be open for new ideas, new methods of doing business, new ways. Because we in the fuel industry, we're working with low margins, so low overheads, higher productivity, and ways to achieve that. I like targets, and to work on targets makes to utilize your product, your tools to the maximum. But you mustn't cut on quality in any way. If you need to service your trucks or your tankers or your whatever, your computers, do that. Don't cut corners by not servicing it or not looking after it. So the way forward, we must adapt and we must see where we can better on that. We must always be open to adapt. That's how I see it, the way forward for us. We just have to do that and keep, we've got Afrikaans saying, moenie karring aan 'n wenresep nie.
Moenie karring aan 'n wenresep nie.
As hy werk, moenie aan hom karring.
I like that.
So,
It also seems to be a industry for sayings, right? Because when I was listening to you now, I was thinking, don't be penny wise and pound foolish in this industry.
so you
Maintain the quality,
must maintain the quality, always be hands-on.
right?
Always be hands-on. And you must look after the pennies. The pounds will look after itself. That is
Good advice.
That's a way forward. And be adjustable.
Yeah.
Just don't think you're the cleverest. There's always people better than you. Much better.
In the future, what does that look like? If you think about the petroleum industry, if you think about things like renewable energy,
I see you must always be observant what's going, because it's developing faster renewable energy. And there's a lot of changes coming. But in not the near future, I think in the next 10 years, or 5 years to 10 years, the changes will come. For us with battery-operated trucks, I don't think the batteries is too heavy. You're gonna
It's going to affect your payload.
the payload is a thing. But I'll work on that. I know that it's inevitable that the changes is going to come.
Yeah, the batteries will get lighter and more efficient over
but
time.
you must be, if you go into that energy, into that side, be hands-on. Read up and go and see what is the future. How the big people is the big industries is going with that. And we can follow. And sometimes the big industries follows us with some of the methods. Grow with the maximum utilizing everything you've got with a minimum cost. Not like cutting corners, but low overheads is very important in this industry. With the renewable stuff also. So, might be Elon Musk is coming out with a radar truck.
You think there's an imminent threat, though, in terms of renewables? Electric cars, South Africa? What's your view?
I think South Africa, for the next 15 years, 15 to 20 years, I'll say, we're still going to have, because it depends on the price. You have to pay for the electric cars and stuff like that. We're still going to have our fuel. The fuel, it will still play a factor. And I don't know if you've noticed it. There's a natural resistance against the electrical cars or battery-operated cars and so from the public. In the sense, not about it's a good thing for the emissions and stuff like that, but the people we grew up. If I say I'm
you mean the older generation?
The older generations has got a resistance against it because I
have noticed that.
I would like to have that powerful Ford Mustang or something like that.
Like the sound of the car.
Like the sound of the car, and you can do that tuning in the rally cars. I know there's a lot of the rally guys build in their own garage at the house.
Yeah.
Play there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to be possible with the electrical cars.
Yeah.
They will be also. They will.
Somebody was saying to me, electrical cars don't have a personality.
That's it.
Like an internal combustion engine, driven vehicle.
That's it. Yeah, no, for sure. That is,
because
there's always a fuel challenge. Okay, there's a challenge to see how far you can get on a battery, but how are you going to do from there when you run out?
Yeah. And then, in conclusion, let me ask you, Tzaneen, how are things going in Tzaneen? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in the Greater Tzaneen area?
I see in the Greater Tzaneen area, it's going well in our area.
Because you're quite involved on the farming side as well.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of farming business.
Mm-hmm.
Tzaneen is not an industrial town. It's more farming related and construction and so on. It's going well in our area. Our area is playing a big role in food security. We've got a big variety of farming there, from cattle farming, game, citrus, avocados, lychees, mangoes. The cattle and foot and mouth has at this stage quite a big thing.
It's a major problem.
It's a major problem. And our town, our Tzaneen area is growing. It's a very peaceful area. It's a very nice area to live in. So that's Tzaneen. I don't want to move and live in
anywhere else.
Anywhere else. I want to stay there. My roots is there.
Yeah. Meis, I want to say a very big thank you to you for spending some time with us, for coming on the show. Please pass my regards on to Monica and Leon and the rest of the family as well. It has been a real privilege to work with a company like yours and the people that you are over so many years. And I'm so happy we had an opportunity to have a chat and catch up on a few things and share a few stories as well. So I want to say a big thank you to you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Part of the success is to build a relationship with your suppliers. Don't jump around for small things. Sort the problem out. Build a relationship, and the relationship helps you grow. And your supply also grows there. That's the benefit you have. And that's why we stuck with you, with Gulfstream, for so many years.
Thanks for that. Much appreciated. One more thing before you go, though. I don't know if you recognize this.
Oh, yes. There at the office, when you hit.
Yeah, this is the bell we ring when we have special moments.
Yeah, special moments when you hit a certain level of volumes.
Yeah, it was usually when we sold 1 million liters a day or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But I decided, I mean, we've brought this along to show and tell because we thought when we have special moments on the show also, we want to give our guests an opportunity to ring the bell.
Oh, no, thank you.
So if you so choose, Mace.
No, thank you. Can I stand and do
You
it?
You can.
So, just
go for it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shane. That's a privilege.